Good day, everyone. We are the Group 7 that will tackle the research about transparency and accountability that was entitled Transparency and Accountability in Governance, Impact on Corporate Performance, and Stakeholder Trust. And before we start, let me introduce myself and my team first. First of all, my name is Kasandra Jomelyn Castillo, and together with my team, Ms. Shielou Elinon and Ms. Elaiza Joy Mundo, that will tackle to all of you the objectives of our study.
Good day, I am Elaiza Joy Mundo, and for this slide, it's all about the 5 key objectives that guide our study. The first objective is investigate how transparency affects corporate performance and stakeholder trust. It's all about how does transparency affect the business trust and its performance. The second is identify the common challenges organizations face in maintaining transparency and accountability. These are about the challenges and what makes transparency and accountability been difficult to some of organizations. The third is evaluate the impact of governance policies on financial and operational performance. These are about how do governance policies can influence the success of one organization. Fourth is examine the relationship between transparency in governance and corporate performance. It's about how transparency impacts the corporate in governance. And lastly is recommend strategic practices to improve transparency and accountability in corporate governance. This is the last objective that explains the question, what can companies do to improve transparency? These are the recommendations and strategies that our study can be suggested to improve corporate transparency and accountability. And that's it for this slide. Thank you.
And as for the chapter 1 of our study, first I'll discuss to all of you the background of our study and the purpose itself, together with Ms. Shielou and Elinon that will discuss to all of you the significance of our study and the structure of our project. And lastly, Ms. Elaiza Joy Mundo that will discuss to all of you the delegating of our tasks. So good day everyone, my name is Casandra Jomelyn Castillo, and for today, we will tackle the background of the study in transparency and accountability. So transparency and accountability is a fundamental pillar of governance. That is because both transparency and accountability helps to prevent unethical behavior and mismanagement conducting to long-term sustainability and to investors' trust. Second is the openness and clarity. This refers to the transparency. So transparency refers to the openness and clarity of the information in companies' reports, in which organizations discloses their information that relevant to their operations, financial performance, and decision-making processes. So this also means that the company should provide clear, accurate, and timely financial and operational informations. So with the use of transparency, this allows the investors and stakeholders to make informed decisions with regards to their company reports and information. Third is the responsibility for actions and decisions. So this refers naman to the accountability. So accountability refers to the implication of responsibility for actions and decisions coupled with their willingness to be held accountable for their consequences. So this means that the company leaders and decision makers must be held accountable for their choices. So when the times goes wrong or there is something goes wrong with their decisions, those responsible should face consequences and corrective measurements. The fourth one is the erosion of trust between stakeholders. So without transparency and accountability in a company, this may lead to erosion of trust between the stakeholders with cause of hinders to the collaboration, innovation, and overall productivity of the company that may result to poor decision-making processes. Just like the corporate scandal of Enron and WorldCom scandal. So on to the next slide, which is the Enron and WorldCom scandal. So these two were the biggest corporate scandal in the history. So Enron and WorldCom scandal demonstrate the consequences of poor governance, leading it to financial and collapses or loss of the stakeholder trust. So Enron used fraudulent act or fraudulent accounting practices or off-the-book financing to hide their debt and inflate their profits. While on the other hand, the WorldCom scandal was engaged in massive accounting fraud by inflating their assets and revenues, which led both of this company to bankruptcy and legal consequences for the executives. So next one is the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. So in the response to WorldCom and Enron scandal, the US passed this Sarbanes-Oxley Act in 2002 to improve the corporate governance. So with this law, this aims to prevent the corporate fraud and restore the investors' trust. And lastly, with the use of transparency and accountability, this may gain as an essential in current business environment, because transparency and accountability became essential in current business environment since stakeholders like investors, staff, and clients demand a higher level of corporate integrity. So understanding how accountability and transparency affects companies' overall business sustainability, the stakeholders' relationship, and corporate performance can be gained by researching the effects of governance methods. Now, let's proceed to the purpose of the study. So, the purpose of the study is to address the impact of corporate performance to the stakeholder trust. This examines how factors like financial transparency, ethical decision-making, and operation efficiency influence the stakeholder trust. If a company consistently performs well and maintains ethical governance, the stakeholders are more likely to invest in and support the business itself. Now let's proceed to the second purpose of the study. The second purpose of the study is identifying the best practices in improving the governance structure. This refers to the framework, policy, and leadership practices that guide the company, which ensure that the directors act in the best interest of the stakeholders, provide honest financial reports, provide integrity and responsibility in decision-making, and lastly, actively considering the interests of investors, employees, and customers. And last purpose of the study is to provide actionable recommendation. So this study will not just analyze governance practices, but also provide practical solutions that companies can implement, like enhancing their transparency and improving leadership accountability.
Good day, I am Shielou the Elinon, and I will discuss the significance of this study. The findings of this study will contribute significantly to the various sectors by emphasizing the importance of transparency and accountability in governance and their impact on corporate performance and stakeholder trust. We have 4 sectors, and let's begin with businesses. The study shows how being honest and being responsible to your actions can enhance the financial performance, avoid risk, and make better decisions. It will also help leaders to understand why good governance is important in long-term success. Second is the stakeholders, including the shareholders, employees, customers, or investors. It will highlight the role of trust in businesses. It will give them a valuable insights about investments, employments, or partnerships by assessing the governance standard on the company. Third is policymakers. They are the one who responsible to make a governance standard to ensure that all the action of their stakeholders are aligned to the rules and regulations. So it will help them to develop and create a much better policies to prevent fraud, corruptions, and enhance the relationship between the environment and the associations. Last, it will contribute to the future researchers and students. It will guide them by giving them a valuable knowledge about what is transparency, what is accountability, and how good governance works in a company. Additionally, it will develop their ethical leadership skills, career decisions, and critical thinking when analyzing a business. Lastly, it will equip them to their academic and professional growth.
Good day. Again, I am Elaiza Joy Mundo, and for this slide, I will be presenting the structure of our project, outlining how our study is organized across the 5 chapters. The first chapter provides an introduction of our study. It includes background information, purpose, objective, significance of the study, structure of the project, and tasks of each member. It explains why the study is important and who will benefit from it. Next, in Chapter 2, it explains the main ideas and theories related to the topic. It defines important terms, describes process, frameworks, or systems, and discusses challenges, opportunities, or trends. This chapter also uses some examples, diagrams, or tables to make the information clearer and easier to understand. Moving on, Chapter 3 explains the research methods used to gather and analyze data. It includes the methodology, secondary data collection, data presentation, and analysis of collected data. This chapter also justifies the chosen data collection methods to ensure the accuracy and reliability of the study. In Chapter 4, this chapter represents the conclusion by summarizing the key points of our study. It also includes recommendations, offering practical suggestions or advice based on the findings. And lastly, Chapter 5. This chapter aims to provide an executive summary of the study by highlighting key findings, conclusions, and insights. It reviews the research objectives, explains how they were addressed, and presents the main outcome. Additionally, it offers recommendations based on the study's result, guiding future actions or research. With this structured approach, our project ensures a clear and logical flow of information, making our study comprehensive and well-organized. And that's it for this slide. Thank you.
In our study, we divided the task among team members to ensure a well-structured and detailed study. Kasandra Jomelyn Castillo is responsible for objectives, background information, and purpose of the study to provide an overview and explain the significance of the study. She is also assigned to opportunities, challenges, and trends in Chapter 2, analyzing the key advantages and potential obstacles. Additionally, she will handle the Chapter 4 to give a comprehensive discussion about the findings. Next is Elaiza Joy del Mundo. She is assigned to the objectives and task section in Chapter 1, defining the study goals. She is also worked in diagrams and tables in Chapter 2, providing visual representations of key concepts. Furthermore, she is responsible for Chapter 5, where she will summarize the conclusions and recommendations. Lastly, Shielou di Elinon, is in charge of objectives, structure of the project, and significance of the study, outlining the foundation of research. I am also responsible for theoretical framework and definition of terms in Chapter 2, clarifying the essential concepts of the study. Lastly, I will oversee the whole Chapter 3, detailing the research methodology, data collection, and analysis process.
And as for the Chapter 2 of our study, first, the definition of terms that will discuss by Ms. Shielou Elinon, together with Ms. Elaiza Joy del Mundo that will discuss to all of you the framework that used in our study, and the challenges, opportunities, and trends that I will be discussing in the last part of our Chapter 2.
So let's dive into the Chapter 2, and let's begin it with the definition of terms to have a clearly understanding of the key terminologies used in this study. First is accountability. So it refers to the entities or corporations that are obliged to be responsible to their actions and have an explanations or justification, particularly in financial performance, ethical conduct, and law compliance. Second is transparency. So it refers to being open, honest, and give clarity to all informations, decision-making, and processes, ensuring that all informations are accessible and understandable to all relevant stakeholders. Third is corporate governance. It is the importance of establishing rules, processes, and practices that guide how corporate are directed and controlled. Fourth is the corporate performance. It is the assessment of financial productivity and sustainability, reflecting the effectiveness to fulfill the stakeholder expectations and achieve long-term success. Fifth is stakeholders. These are the individuals or group with a vested interest in a company that can affect and be affected on its operations and performance. It includes investors, employees, customers, suppliers, governments, communities, shareholders, and trade associations. Lastly is stakeholder trust. So it refers to the confidence and reliability that stakeholders place in a company based on its transparency, accountability, ethical practices, and ability to meet commitments.
Good day. Again, I am Elaiza Joy del Mundo, and for this slide and to the next 5 slides, I will be discussing the theoretical framework of our study. So, our study emphasizes the significance of effective corporate governance through various theories established within the corporations. And these theories have been differentiated according to year. And the first one is the agency theory. The agency theory explains how owners or shareholders hire their managers or other agents or company executives to run a business, including the decision-making theory, which can lead to conflicts if managers act in their own interest instead of the owners. For the second theory is the stewardship theory. Stewardship theory is a theory that empowers the managers or executives by creating the most effective CG motivation or the corporate governance motivation while emphasizing its responsibility, loyalty, and honesty by ensuring that they are prioritizing the company's long-term success over its personal gain. For the third and last theory is the stakeholders theory. Stakeholder theory refers to the requirements that suggested that in a company, all the stakeholders must consider the interests of all parties involved, such as shareholders, employees, customers, suppliers, and the community, when making decisions to ensure its overall benefit. So, in our study, researchers use the stakeholder theory to study how being transparent and accountable in a company can improve its performance and build trust among its stakeholders. It's about the idea that when a company is open about its actions and take its responsibility, it can strengthen the relationships within its groups, leading to better outcomes for both the company and its stakeholders. So, stakeholders theory includes investors, employees, customers, suppliers, communities, and environment. In this figure, it explains that in a company, its stakeholders and all of whom are impacted by a company's actions, the company must consider their interests in decision-making. To achieve the company's aims in an organization such as protecting the stakeholder interests, building stakeholder trust, and to enhance its corporate performance. And for the last slide, it says that the stakeholders theory emphasizes that companies should balance the competing interests or opposing interests of all stakeholders. Because again, by doing this, they can create long-term value and encourage growth that can benefit everyone. And that's it for the part of theoretical framework. Thank you.
For the challenges arise in our study, first of that is the corruption and ethical breaches. Companies sometimes face issues like bribery, fraud, and unethical decision-making. And these unethical issues may weaken the public trust and may lead to severe financial and legal consequences. Second is the data privacy and transparency. Company must balance being transparent with protecting their sensitive data. An over-disclosure can risk the privacy violations, while under-disclosure can reduce the trust of stakeholders. And lastly, the challenges that arise in our study is the stakeholder mistrust. If companies lack in transparency, stakeholders like investors, employees, and customers may lose its confidence. Even with transparency efforts, regaining trust may be a long-term challenge of a company. And as for the opportunities that arise in our study, first of that is the enhanced corporate reputation. Companies that prioritize transparency and accountability may build trust and attract investors and customers. This may also strengthen the company's credibility and may foster a positive public image to the organization. Second is the stronger stakeholder engagement. Engaging stakeholders in decision-making may foster trust and loyalty. This may also contribute to a long-term business stability and its growth with the engagement to its stakeholders. And lastly, regulatory compliance as a strength. Rather than seeing compliance as a burden, company can use strict regulation as a way to strengthen the governance. Compliance also enhances their reputation as industry leaders. And for the trends, we give you two trends that arise on our study. First of that is the AI and data analytics for governance. So the AI or artificial intelligence helps today companies to detect fraud, improve risk assessment, and enhance decision making. With the use of data analytics tools, this may help the businesses make informed decisions based on a real-time insights. Second and lastly is the blockchain for transparent transactions. Blockchain technology creates tamper-proof records, ensuring transparency in transactions. This may reduce fraud risk and enhance the supply chain transparency.
Good day, I am Shielou de Elinon and I will discuss the Chapter 3 of this study, and we examine the research paper of Amisakovic noong 2024. May encounter natin dito yung background information, statement of the problem, data presentation and analysis, data findings, justifications, challenges and limitations, and how we align it to the stakeholders framework. Examine this research paper entitled Corporate Governance Practices and Service Delivery in Uasin Gishu Country in Kenya. In this chapter, we use secondary data collection through data analysis method to analyze the research title from Umirzakovic TF 2024. We examine this research paper entitled Corporate Governance Practices and Service Delivery in Uasin Gishu Country in Kenya. Showcase the transparency and accountability and how it can affect to corporate performance and stakeholder trust. But before we delve in this study, alamin muna natin ng kaunti ang kung ano nga ba ang Uasin Gishu Country in Kenya. So, Uasin Gishu Country in Kenya is one of the countries located in Kenya in the former Rift Valley province. It is divided into sub-countries including Keses, Malvin, Kapseret, Ainabkoy, Soy, and Turbo, which serves as the focus in this study. Turbo sub-country services include education, water, agricultures, and environment. So, what's the key problem of this study? According to Umirzakovic, first problem na nakikita is poor management and involvement of stakeholders. Second, lack of transparency and inefficient use of resources. But we will discuss it further in data presentation. The challenges not only compromise the quality of service but also reduce people's trust in governance. Additionally, lack of transparency and inefficient use of resources can make the situation even worse, limiting the country's ability to meet public expectations. So these pictures shows the result of transparency in Uasin Gishu in Kenya. As we can see in the slide, out of 75 participants, only 67 responses are made. According to the survey results of transparency, mean is 3.5 and standard deviation is 0.9. Shows that the information is easily available to customers seeking services. However, they disagreed that the information was distributed in a timely manner. Results in mean 2.9 and standard deviation of 1.1. Additionally, the existence of regular reports on services delivery was also questioned. Bakit? Because yung mean result niya is 2.7 and yung standard deviation niya is 1.3 lang, indicating of inconsistency in responses. On a positive note, public understanding of government services and their associated cost was relatively high. Results of 4.4 as mean and standard deviation is 0.9. Additionally, the presence of verifiable receipts for payment was acknowledged. Results of 3.6 mean and standard deviation of 1.0. So the picture in this slide shows how the government and employees of Uasin Gishu, Kenya is accountable to their actions. Next naman is yung survey result ng accountability ng Uasin Gishu, Kenya. So, majority of the participants admit that the country government employees provide information to clients. Yun nga yung pagbibigay ng receipts. So, yung mean niya is yung 4.4 and yung standard deviation naman niya is 0.7. Next is lower cadre employees are held accountable for their actions. Ibig sabihin, yung mga employees niya na kumikilos sa government nila is accountable daw sa actions. So, yung mean niya is 4.5 and yung SD naman niya is 0.8. Next is receipts. Receipts are only provided after payment. So, yung mean niya is 4.6 and yung SD is 0.5. So makikitaan natin that the Uasin Gishu Kenya is accountable to their action. This table shows the overall results of this study. First result is yung accessibility to services and satisfaction levels are moderate. Yung mean niya is 4.4 and yung standard deviation naman niya is 0.7 to 0.8. Service timeliness is slightly better. Yung mean niya is 4.6 and yung SD naman niya is 0.5. Lastly, the weakest area is yung feedback mechanism. Yung mean niya is 2.2 and yung SD naman niya is 0.7, indicating a poor citizen engagement. So, i-align naman natin siya sa stakeholder theory. This studies illustrates the role of transparency, accountability, and accessibility in public service delivery. Transparency is evident as government employees provide information to public, but delays in sharing updates and inconsistencies in service reports create gaps that weaken trust. Accountability is reinforced by holding employees responsible for their actions and ensuring that employees are responsible to their actions and ensuring financial transparency through receipts for payments. However, the biggest challenge is the lack of effective feedback system which limits citizen engagement and contradicts the theories emphasized in stakeholder involvement. Improving communication, timely reporting, and structured feedback mechanisms would help align public service delivery with stakeholder theory by ensuring that the government officers are more responsive to the needs of the people they serve. So let's now talk to the challenges and limitations na study na to. So since nakonduct na ni Mr. Kofic yung survey method, let's see the challenges na kinaharap niya during this research. So meron tayong 3 challenges. First is hesitant participants. He said that some participants are hesitant to participate due to the lack of knowledge about the purpose of this research. Second is unavailable respondents. So the research collected a sample size with 75 participants and only 67 responses are made, which yielded a rate of 89.3% responses. Third challenges is negative perception. So certain individuals were resistant to the research topic, making data collection difficult. Is limitations. So, meron tayong 3 limitations. First is limited sample scope. The study focused on 2 sub-countries in Uasin Gishu, which may not fully represent other countries. Hindi nila na-compare or yun. Next is potential response bias. Some participants may have given socially desirable answers rather than their true opinions. Third is lack of quality insights. The study relied mostly on survey responses, limiting in-depth explanations of the findings. So, lastly is the justification. In this chapter, the proponents use document analysis to examine how transparency and accountability affect the corporate performance and stakeholder trust. The document analysis method was chosen because it allows for an in-depth exploration of real-world situations, providing an comprehensive insights into the study. The data is reliable and valid as it is collected from reliable secondary sources, ensuring an accuracy and relevance to the study. Since the study was already conducted, there is no room for bias in the data collections and the confidentiality of respondents is safeguarded as no personal information was included. This ensures ethical integrity by protecting the anonymity of participants while maintaining the credibility of the research findings.
So that's it, everyone. Thank you all guys for listening on our research study of transparency and accountability. And as for the chapter 4 and 5, we will continue it on the final term project. So see you guys!